The moment the boy's small hand slipped beneath the water, Aaron Clark didn't hesitate. Without a thought for the freezing temperature or his own safety, he hurled his toolbox onto the pavement and dove into the river. The current was vicious, churning against him as if it wanted to swallow them both. For a second, he thought he'd lost the boy. But then he felt the tiny fingers clutch his jacket. He kicked hard, gasping as they broke the surface. A few strangers shouted, someone called for help, but by the time the paramedics arrived, Aaron was gone. Later that night, soaked to the bone, he sat alone in his small flat, staring at the photograph of his daughter, Ella. "You'd have done the same, yeah?" he whispered. She smiled back from the frame, a missing front tooth and all. Tomorrow was a new start, a new job, new boss, new chance. He had no idea that the boy he'd saved and the woman who would soon control his paycheck were the same family. London's skyline was still wrapped in fog when Aaron arrived at the Whitmore Grand Hotel, a gleaming tower of glass and marble overlooking the Thames. His uniform felt stiff, and the name tag reading Aaron Clark. Maintenance sat crooked on his chest. He hadn't slept much, his muscles still aching from yesterday's dive. The world didn't pause for heroes. Rent was due, and Ella's school trip needed paying for. He signed in, keeping his head down as he was led through gleaming corridors lined with art he couldn't name. The staff whispered about their new operations director. "She's cold as ice," one said. "Brilliant, though. Runs this place like a kingdom." Aaron barely listened. He wasn't there to make friends or impress anyone. He just needed stability. When the lift doors opened, the first thing he saw was her, Eleanor Whitmore, tall, elegant, hair pulled back into a perfect knot. Her voice was calm, precise, commanding. "You must be Mr. Clark," she said, offering a brief handshake. "Punctual. I like that. We value reliability here." Her eyes flicked over him, polite, distant. She had no idea. For a moment, Aaron thought he saw something flicker in her gaze, a softness, a trace of exhaustion. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "You'll report to Mr. Daniels in maintenance," she continued. "If you need anything, go through him." He nodded, keeping his mouth shut. He had no reason to tell her who he was or what he'd done just a day earlier. Eleanor Whitmore's world had always been about control, every meeting, every schedule, every detail of her hotel running like clockwork. But last night had nearly destroyed that illusion. She could still see it. Her son Oliver's small face beneath the icy river. The chaos of people screaming on the embankment, the paramedics saying, "He's going to be fine." And the man, that stranger, who vanished before she could even ask his name. This morning, she'd buried her fear beneath crisp professionalism. No one at work knew she'd spent half the night in the hospital. Oliver was home now, safe with her sister. But the guilt still gnawed at her. She'd been distracted, on a call, and in those seconds, her boy had slipped away. When she returned to her office, she glanced out the window at the Thames below. The water looked calm again, as if nothing had happened. She closed her eyes briefly. Whoever that man was, he'd risked his life for her son. She'd find him someday. She had to. Later that afternoon, as she passed through the lobby, she noticed a maintenance worker on his knees fixing a loose panel. For a moment, something in his posture caught her attention. The wet curls of hair, the calm focus, the quiet dignity. Her heart stuttered, but she brushed it off. "You missed a spot," she said lightly, more out of habit than criticism. The man looked up briefly, offering a polite smile. She didn't recognize his face. But he recognized hers. That night, Aaron stood outside the hotel after his shift, watching the city lights shimmer on the Thames. He thought of the boy again, small, pale, coughing water as Aaron had carried him to shore. He hoped he was okay. Then his phone buzzed. A message from Ella's teacher about overdue fees. His stomach tightened. He'd figure it out somehow. He always did. The next few days passed quietly. Aaron fixed leaky taps, rewired lights, smiled politely at guests who didn't notice him. He liked it that way. Invisible people didn't cause trouble. But Eleanor, she noticed him more than she wanted to admit. She'd catch glimpses of him, holding a door open for an elderly guest, repairing a chandelier with calm patience, talking gently to a cleaner in distress. Something about his steadiness unsettled her. He reminded her of something, or someone, she couldn't quite name. When their eyes met one afternoon across the grand lobby, time seemed to still. He quickly looked away, but the feeling lingered. For the first time in years, Eleanor found herself curious about him. A week later, Eleanor brought Oliver to the hotel. He'd begged to see where she worked, and she couldn't refuse. He still tired easily, but he was healing. The boy's eyes lit up at the grand staircase and marble floors. "Mum, this place is like a palace." As they walked through the staff corridor, Oliver stopped suddenly. A man was kneeling near a wall socket, tool belt at his side. "Mummy!" Oliver cried, tugging her sleeve. "That's him!" Eleanor froze. "What do you mean, darling? The man who saved me! That's him!" Aaron looked up, startled, his wrench slipping from his hand. For a long, breathless moment, their eyes locked, and everything clicked into place. Eleanor's face went pale, her hand trembling as she reached for her son. You were the one," she whispered. Aaron stood, awkward and quiet. "I just did what anyone would have done," he said softly. But Eleanor knew, not everyone would have. Eleanor insisted on thanking him properly. She invited him to her office, but Aaron resisted. "Really, ma'am, it's fine," he murmured, wiping his hands. But she was determined. "Please," she said gently, "you saved my son's life. At least allow me to express my gratitude." Inside her office, sunlight poured through tall windows. She offered him tea, but he shook his head. "You work here now?" she asked. He nodded. "Just started yesterday." Something stirred inside her, guilt and gratitude tangled together. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "You saved everything that matters to me." Aaron smiled faintly. "Then we're even. My daughter's the reason I get up every day. I just hope someone would help her if she ever needed it." His quiet honesty hit her harder than she expected. That night, Eleanor couldn't stop thinking about him, not just as her employee, but as a man who'd risked his life for a stranger. Weeks passed, and life at the hotel settled into rhythm. But something had shifted. Eleanor found reasons to pass through maintenance more often, asking small questions, watching him work. He was competent, kind, and surprisingly good with everyone, from receptionists to the grumpy kitchen staff. Aaron, meanwhile, tried to keep his distance. The last thing he needed was rumors or attention. But every time Eleanor smiled, it felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. He caught himself thinking about her laugh, the way she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. He scolded himself for it. She was his boss and way out of his world. One evening, when the power flickered during a storm, they found themselves alone in the dimly lit lobby. She laughed nervously as thunder cracked outside. "I've always hated storms," she admitted. Aaron offered a flashlight. "Funny," he said. "They make me feel alive." Something in that quiet exchange lingered long after the lights returned. Eleanor began noticing small things, how Aaron's eyes softened when he talked about his daughter, how he carried himself with quiet pride. He wasn't like anyone she knew in her polished corporate world. There was no pretense, no ego, just goodness. One afternoon, she saw him outside, helping an elderly guest into a cab during the rain. He handed the woman his own coat and stood drenched as the car pulled away. Eleanor's heart twisted. She wasn't supposed to care. But she did. Her assistant noticed, too. "You seem distracted lately," he teased. She brushed it off, but that night, staring at her reflection, she admitted to herself that something had changed. For the first time since her divorce, she felt something close to warmth. Aaron's daughter, Ella, came to the hotel one weekend when her childminder fell sick. He asked permission, and Eleanor agreed instantly. The girl's bright laughter filled the corridors like sunlight. She and Oliver bonded within minutes, racing around the staff lounge with crayons and giggles. Eleanor watched them, her son smiling again, Aaron's eyes soft with affection, and something in her heart ached. "She's lovely," she whispered. Aaron smiled. "Gets that from her mum." His tone was wistful, distant. She didn't press. As the children played, Eleanor realized something simple but powerful. Kindness was never about grand gestures. Sometimes it was in small, quiet moments, like a father's patience or the courage to love again. But not everyone was happy about their growing closeness. Rumors began spreading among the staff. "The boss and the handyman," someone whispered. "Must be nice saving lives for promotions." Aaron heard it all. He considered quitting. The last thing he wanted was pity or gossip. But when he saw Eleanor's weary face in a late meeting, he stayed. Not for himself, but for her. That evening, she found him repairing a broken light in the staff kitchen. "You've heard them, haven't you?" she asked softly. He nodded. "Let them talk," he said. "We know the truth." For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then, without thinking, she reached out and touched his hand. "Thank you," she whispered. Eleanor's ex-husband, Jonathan, returned one weekend, wealthy, arrogant, and distant. He'd come to see Oliver, but his eyes lingered too long on Eleanor. "You've changed," he said. "This place suits you, but don't tell me you're fraternizing with the help." Her jaw tightened. "He's the man who saved your son's life," she said coldly. Jonathan scoffed. "Then you should have given him a medal, not attention." Aaron overheard part of it, his stomach sinking. He wasn't angry, just tired. He gathered his tools and left quietly, determined not to be the reason for more trouble. But Eleanor wasn't about to let someone else's judgment dictate her heart again. The next day, she found him in the maintenance room, wiping grease from his hands. "Don't walk away," she said. He didn't turn around. "I don't want to make things harder for you." "You're not," she said firmly. "You've only made things better." He looked at her then, eyes weary but warm. "You deserve someone who fits your world, Eleanor." She stepped closer. "Maybe I'm tired of that world." For a heartbeat, everything between them hung in silence, fragile, unspoken, but real. A sudden hotel emergency interrupted their moment. A burst pipe flooding one of the banquet halls hours before a major charity gala. Chaos erupted. Aaron took charge instantly, organizing staff, rerouting electricity, even rolling up his sleeves to mop floors. Eleanor watched in awe as he led calmly, efficiently. When the guests arrived that evening, the hall was spotless. No one would ever know what happened. Later, she found him sitting by the boiler room, drenched but smiling faintly. "You saved us again," she said softly. He laughed. "I just fix things, ma'am." "Not just things," she replied quietly. The charity gala raised thousands for children, hospitals, a cause close to Eleanor S. Hart. Aaron stood quietly at the back, watching her shine. When she finally spotted him, she excused herself from a conversation and approached. "Dance with me," she said suddenly. He froze. "What?" "It's just one dance," she smiled. "No one will care." He hesitated, then took her hand. The music slowed, lights dimmed, and for a brief, perfect moment, two broken souls moved as one. The next morning, word spread again. Whispers, gossip, assumptions. Eleanor was called into a board meeting. They questioned her professionalism, her relationship with staff, her judgment. She stood her ground. "I will not apologize for gratitude or for kindness," she said firmly. Aaron offered to resign, but she refused. "You're not leaving because of their narrow minds," she said. "This place needs more people like you." For the first time, he didn't argue. He simply nodded, proud, humbled, and quietly moved. Months later, the Whitmore Grand felt different, warmer, lighter, alive. Oliver and Ella were inseparable. Aaron and Eleanor still moved carefully, respecting boundaries, but something beautiful was growing between them. One evening, as autumn returned, they walked by the Thames, the same river that had brought them together. The water shimmered beneath the streetlights. "Funny, isn't it?" she said. "How one moment can change everything?" Aaron smiled. "Sometimes you have to dive into the deep to find what matters." Eleanor reached for his hand, and this time he didn't pull away. The city around them faded, leaving only the sound of the river, the warmth of her hand, and the quiet certainty that love, like courage, often begins with a single selfless act.